Welcome to Too Bad AppSource Rules Don't Work for All Targets. Hey, I'm Eric, and one of the many rules, one of the rules that is applied whenever you are submitting something to AppSource is the fact that you are not allowed to submit an update to your app that contains a breaking change. And what is a breaking change? Well, a breaking change will mean that you're doing something that if somebody else has a dependency on your app, their dependency will break. So this is pretty intrusive because if you take a dependency on any UI component, means that you can do on add after, add before, add first, add last, then it basically means that you cannot remove a UI component that you have at some point introduced. The same goes with a lot of other pieces. So you might think, no, I'm doing something that has no impact. But it might have an impact. And Microsoft is checking for that when you're submitting to AppSource. But you can actually do the check yourself. And I'm going to show you how. And the title of the video kind of refers to that. Why is this only for AppSource app? We could benefit of this, having this for all targets, because maybe an app is not for AppSource, but it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be a well-behaving app and basically comply to the same set of rules. Anyway, before I get ahead of myself, let me show you how this actually works. So I was just sitting and working on the next version of the Simple Object Designer, and you should totally not look at the folder called New Tables, because that's not public yet. Anyway, so what I have done here, let me show you. In my settings.json, actually not in my settings.json. Where did that come from? You would think that it perhaps were in settings.json, just like I did. That's not the case. No, let's find the one called AppSource cop.json. Let's actually right click on it, left click. So here you can see that there are more lines than normally, especially these 4 lines here. The first one is saying baseline package cache path. So a location of a baseline package set, and then a name, publisher, and a version. So the idea here is that you point this location to somewhere where you have the latest artifacts that has been released. So in this case, for the Simple Object Designer version of 3.0072 or 72, that's the latest and greatest version that's live on AppSource. And we can probably find that folder somewhere in here. We can see this right here. And what does it contain? Well, it contains the AppSource app file. It contains all the dependencies that this app has. So now when I'm working here, so basically that's the change, that we're adding information to AppSource cop JSON, and we're pointing to a location where we have the released artifacts with dependencies. So what happens? Let me show a couple of examples how this actually works. So here's a table, and this is a table we're using to keep track of what extensions we know and what has been updated and so on. That doesn't really matter for this case, but clearly there are fields in here that I'm not using. So you say, let's get rid of that field. Right, let's delete a field. So we'll delete a field. And we can see that I'm in the middle of something, so there's a bunch of warnings also, so ignore that. But I got an error now. So I deleted a field, and now I got a compiler error saying that field with name hash algorithm and ID 14 was found in the previous version, but is missing in the current version. Hang on, let's see if we can get this up and not being blocked by my big head. Missing in the current version. This might break the upgrade of installed application, of existing installed application. So that's pretty cool. But maybe you say, Eric, we know that we should not delete fields, right? Sure, but let's try another thing here. So we will uncomment this guy, and the error goes away. But let's say the hash algorithm, that should not be an engine. That should be a text 100, right? Let's change the type of a field. Now we get also an error saying, you changed the type of a field. That's not allowed. Okay. So that's also detected. Let's change that back. But then you say, Eric, we know that we're not, just as well as we know not to delete fields, we know not to change the type of fields. Okay, let's try another thing. So here's my setup page. And recently I'm changing some stuff and creating a way to export and import app in a file format-ish way, right? So the function of, here's an action that I know I'm not using this action anymore, so let's get rid of this action. So now I just removed an action from a page. So the action with name config package defined in page simple field setup HDD was found in the previous version, but is missing in the current extension. This will break dependencies because maybe somebody is adding something to my setup screen and do a add after config package, and then that anchor is gone and their app will fail. So I'm no longer allowed to get rid of this action because it has been public at some point. So I have to keep the action and say, okay, it's visible, it's obsolete, and so on. And you see, the same thing goes for this one, that I had a public procedure called create rapid start package, and if I get let's just change the scope to local, and there we go. So now that is no longer available to call from outside. So somebody might have taken dependencies on my app and were calling this procedure from this page. Okay, but let's say, okay, now I'm going to change the config path. So I'm going to add a name parameter to this guy, right? So now the same thing is happening. See, we'll get perhaps not the exact same error, but we will get a error saying, hey, the number of parameters in this function has changed from 0 to 1. This will break dependencies. So if you say, okay, maybe this function is no longer the right one. So you might have said, okay, we could say mark that obsolete, but we can still kind of get rid of it. So you might end up in something like this and saying, okay, the new one is the one that takes the name parameter. So now we are fulfilling the dependencies and we're adding a overload of the new version, and the rule set is happy. So no longer any errors on that. So it's a pretty powerful piece of, so what I have done, let me just explain that actually. So what I have done in my, you guys know that I kind of run my very own pipeline thing that's not really, I'll do a video on it at some point. But basically what happens now is that whenever I run a release that is tagged to be uploaded to AppSource, the build procedure will also populate this folder, and it will also update the AppSource cop.json with the new version number. So it's kind of just, okay, so whenever I've released something, it will test, so I avoid getting nasty errors from the validation on AppSource, because I happen to have changed something in the middle of a redesign or something, and suddenly something that was a part of a public interface is no longer part of a public interface or has changed. Of course, well, this also means that you probably need, and I certainly need to think about that I think I tend to design liberally and say, well, whenever I create a procedure like this procedure, that's a great procedure. It has no really dependencies on states and anything else, so you can easily call this from somewhere else and get a nice config package out of this. So I'd say, okay, public first and private afterwards, but I see good reason to start, okay, whenever you do something, maybe you want to go internal, so it's only available from within that extension. This will, of course, also break because this was public before. But back to the title of the video, saying that why is this only for AppSource? Why can't we have this for any target, for PTEs, for on-prem stuff? Why? And what I haven't tried is actually tried to decide whether the AL rules, could I take the rules, say, okay, I will allow some stuff but not other things. I haven't tried that, and I'll try that at some point. But okay, sorry, I was actually, so the AL rules, JSON, where some rules are okay and some rules are not okay. That could be interesting, but I would love to have this for everything, so I kind of could ensure that whatever we're doing is not a nasty upgrade. Maybe we do want a nasty upgrade, but maybe we don't. I think as default we don't want a nasty upgrade. Anyway, I hope you'll try this out, because it's pretty cool, and it has certainly saved me a lot of time from getting nasty errors when uploading to AppSource that I might as well avoid to create the errors to begin with. So that's this video. So let me know in the comments below if you want to try it, or if this is weird, or you think this is pretty cool. And until next time, have a wonderful day, stay safe, and I will see you soon.